My name is Anna, and for most of my life, the person I trusted more than anyone was my sister. Her name is Emily. We grew up in a small town where everyone knew each other. Our parents worked a lot, so most of the time it was just the two of us. Emily was 2 years older than me. When we were kids, I followed her everywhere. If she climbed a tree, I climbed the same tree. If she ran across the street, I ran after her. She was my hero. Or, at least, that's what I believed for many years. People always said we were inseparable. Teachers called us the sisters who share everything. And honestly, we did. We shared clothes. We shared secrets. We shared our dreams about the future. When I was a teenager, Emily was the first person I told about my problems. Not my parents. Not my friends. Emily. She always listened. Sometimes she would sit next to me for hours while I talked. And she would say things like, "Don't worry. I'm always on your side." Back then, I believed every word she said. After high school, Emily moved to the city. She wanted a bigger life. New opportunities. New people. I stayed in her hometown for another year before finally moving there too. And when I arrived, Emily was the first person waiting for me at the train station. She hugged me so tightly I could barely breathe. "I missed you," she said. And I missed her too. At that moment, it felt like nothing had changed. Like we were still those two little girls running through our neighborhood. But life in the city was different. Emily had changed. Not in a bad way. Just different. She had new friends. A new job. A new life. Sometimes I felt like I didn't fully belong in it anymore. But she still made time for me. Every Sunday, we had dinner together. It became our tradition. We would sit at the same small restaurant near her apartment, order pasta, drink cheap wine, and talk for hours. Those nights meant everything to me, because they reminded me that no matter what changed in our lives, we were still sisters. About a year later, something else happened in my life. Something that changed everything. That's when I met Daniel. It happened at a small bookstore cafe. I was looking for a novel when someone accidentally knocked a cup of coffee onto the table next to me. The coffee spilled everywhere. And a voice behind me said, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry." I turned around, and that was the first time I saw him. Daniel looked embarrassed. He grabbed a bunch of napkins and tried to clean the mess. I couldn't help laughing. "It's okay," I said. "No one died." He smiled. And that smile, I still remember it. That's how it started. We talked for almost an hour in that cafe. Then 2 hours. Then 3. By the time the cafe closed, it felt like we had known each other for years. A few days later, we went on our first real date. Then another. And another. Everything moved quickly. But it felt right. Daniel was kind, calm, and incredibly patient. The complete opposite of most people I had dated before. For the first time in a long time, I felt safe. Naturally, the first person I told about him was Emily. She was excited. "Finally," she said. "I was starting to think you would stay single forever." A week later, I introduced them. We met at the same restaurant where Emily and I always had our Sunday dinners. I remember feeling a little nervous. Not because I thought something would go wrong, but because Emily's opinion mattered so much to me. If she liked Daniel, I knew everything would be perfect. When she walked into the restaurant, Daniel stood up to greet her. Emily smiled politely, but something about her expression felt strange. I couldn't explain it. It was subtle, just a quick look, a moment that passed too fast to understand. The dinner itself went well. They talked. They laughed. They even joked with each other. By the end of the night, Emily hugged me goodbye and said, "He seems like a good guy." And I believed her. Months passed. Daniel and I grew closer. Eventually, he moved into my apartment. Life felt peaceful, stable, happy. Emily came over sometimes. Sometimes we all had dinner together. Other times she just stopped by to talk. Everything seemed normal. But looking back now, there were small things I didn't notice. Or maybe I noticed them, but chose to ignore them. Like the way Emily sometimes looked at Daniel when she thought I wasn't watching. Or the way Daniel suddenly became quiet whenever her name came up in conversation. At the time, I told myself it was nothing. After all, this was Emily, my sister, the person I trusted more than anyone. Why would I ever suspect her? Then one evening something happened. Something small. Something that didn't seem important at first. But later, I realized that was the moment everything started to change. It was a Friday night. Daniel had fallen asleep on the couch while watching TV. I was cleaning the kitchen when his phone buzzed on the table. I didn't think much of it until I glanced at the screen and saw a message notification from Emily. That wasn't strange by itself, but the message preview made my stomach drop. It said only 3 words. Don't tell Anna. For a few seconds, I just stood there staring at the phone. Maybe I misunderstood. Maybe it was something harmless. But those 3 words kept echoing in my mind. Don't tell Anna. My name. Why would my sister write something like that to my boyfriend? I told myself not to overthink it. Emily and Daniel had become friendly over the past few months. Maybe they were planning something. Maybe it was a surprise. My birthday was coming up in a few weeks. That had to be it. Yes, that made sense. At least, that's what I told myself. I quickly looked away from the phone and continued cleaning the kitchen. I didn't want to look suspicious, but the thought stayed in my mind for the rest of the night. Later, when Daniel woke up, he picked up his phone and checked the message. For a moment, I watched his face carefully. He looked at the screen. Then he locked the phone almost immediately. Too quickly. Almost like he didn't want me to see anything. Everything okay? I asked casually. Yeah, he said. Just work stuff. Work. Emily didn't work with him, but I didn't say anything. I didn't want to sound paranoid. The next few days felt normal. Or, at least normal on the surface. Daniel acted the same as always. Emily texted me like she usually did. Nothing seemed different, but something inside me had changed. I started noticing things I had never noticed before. Little moments. Small details. Things that didn't quite make sense. One evening I was scrolling through social media when I saw something strange. Emily had posted a photo from a restaurant. The caption said, "Best dinner ever." At first I didn't think much about it, until I looked closer at the background. The restaurant looked familiar. Very familiar. Then I realized why. It was the same restaurant Daniel had told me he went to that night with coworkers. My heart started beating faster. Maybe it was just a coincidence. Cities are full of restaurants. People go to the same places all the time. Still, something about the photo made me uncomfortable. So I zoomed in. And that's when I noticed something that made my stomach twist. In the corner of the photo, barely visible, was a man sitting across from her. You couldn't see his face clearly, but I recognized the jacket immediately. Daniel owned that exact jacket. I had bought it for him last winter. Suddenly, my mind started racing. Maybe she met him there by accident. Maybe he arrived later. Maybe I was imagining things. I tried to calm myself down, but the uncomfortable feeling wouldn't go away. The next Sunday, Emily invited me over to her apartment. We sat on her couch drinking tea, talking about random things like we always did. But I couldn't stop looking at her, studying her face, trying to see if she was hiding something. She looked completely normal, relaxed, smiling. At one point she even asked about Daniel. "How are things with you too?" she said. "Good," I replied. "Really good." She nodded. "That's nice." For a moment our eyes met, and again, I felt that strange feeling. Like there was something unspoken between us. Something invisible hanging in the air. Later that evening, I returned home. Daniel was already there, watching TV. He smiled when I walked in. "How was your day?" he asked. "Good," I said. "Just spent some time with Emily." For a split second, something changed in his expression. It was very subtle, but I noticed it. His smile faded slightly. Then it came back. "Oh," he said. "That's nice." That night, I couldn't sleep. The message, the restaurant photo, the strange looks, everything kept replaying in my mind. At around 2 in the morning, I quietly got out of bed. Daniel was sleeping. His phone was on the nightstand. I stood there staring at it. I had never gone through someone's phone before. Not Daniel's. Not anyone's. But something inside me told me that if I didn't check, I would never stop wondering. My hands were shaking when I picked it up. The screen lit up. Unlocked. He must have forgotten to lock it. For a moment, I hesitated. Then I opened the messages and scrolled down until I found Emily's name. My heart was pounding so loudly, I thought it might wake him up. I tapped the conversation. The screen loaded, and the first message I saw made my entire body go cold, because the conversation between them had been going on for months. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. My fingers felt numb as I stared at the screen. The conversation between Daniel and Emily went back months. Not days. Not weeks. Months. I slowly scrolled upward. Message after message. Some were short. Some were long. But the tone between them was unmistakable. They weren't just talking as friends. There were jokes. Private jokes. Plans. Memories they shared together. Things I knew nothing about. My heart started pounding harder. I kept scrolling. Then I saw a message from Daniel. "I can't keep lying to her forever." A few seconds later, Emily replied, "You have to." Not yet. Not yet. What did that mean? My hands were shaking so badly that I almost dropped the phone. I kept reading. And with every message, the truth became clearer. They had been meeting. More than once. Sometimes during the day. Sometimes at night. Sometimes when Daniel told me he was working late. Sometimes when Emily told me she was busy. My chest felt tight, like the air had suddenly disappeared from the room. Then I found the message I had seen earlier that night. Emily had written, "Don't tell Anna." Daniel replied almost immediately, "I won't." For a long time, I just sat there in the dark, holding the phone, listening to Daniel breathing quietly next to me, the person I loved, sleeping peacefully, while my entire world was falling apart. I wanted to wake him up. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw the phone at the wall. But instead I did nothing. I carefully placed the phone back on the nightstand. Then I lay back down in bed, staring at the ceiling, waiting for morning. The next day felt unreal, like I was walking through someone else's life. Daniel kissed me goodbye before leaving for work, just like he always did. "See you tonight," he said. I forced a smile. "See you." After he left, I sat alone in the apartment for a long time, trying to decide what to do. Part of me wanted to confront them immediately, but another part of me needed answers. The whole truth. Later that afternoon, I sent Emily a message. "Hey, want to grab dinner tonight?" She replied almost instantly. "Of course. The same restaurant where we always met. Our Sunday place." Except this time it was Tuesday. When I arrived, Emily was already there, sitting at the table, smiling. "Hey," she said as I sat down. "You look tired." "I didn't sleep much," I replied. She laughed softly. "Same." For a moment we talked about normal things. Work, weather, random stories. Just like always. And for a few minutes, it almost felt like nothing had changed. Then I took my phone out of my bag, placed it on the table, and opened the screenshots I had taken that morning. Emily noticed the screen. Her smile faded. "What's that?" she asked. I turned the phone toward her and showed her the messages. The color drained from her face instantly. For a few seconds, she didn't say anything. She just stared at the screen. Then she whispered, "How did you find those?" "So it's true," I said quietly. She looked up at me, her eyes filled with panic. "Anna, I can explain." But I shook my head. "How long?" She didn't answer. "How long, Emily?" Finally she spoke. "A few months." "A few months." The words felt like knives. "You're my sister," I said. My voice was shaking now. "I trusted you more than anyone." Tears filled her eyes. "I never wanted to hurt you, but you did." People in the restaurant were starting to look at us, but I didn't care. "Does Daniel love you?" I asked. Emily hesitated, and that hesitation told me everything. At that moment, I realized something important. The two people I trusted the most in my life had been lying to me, together, for months. I stood up from the table. "Anna, wait." But I didn't stop. I walked out of the restaurant, into the cold night air. For the first time in years, I felt completely alone. Later that night, Daniel came home. I was sitting in the living room waiting for him. He immediately noticed something was wrong. "What happened?" he asked. I held up my phone. "I know." His face went pale. For a moment, he didn't say anything. Then he sat down slowly. "I was going to tell you," he said quietly. "When?" He didn't answer. Silence filled the room. Finally, I stood up and walked toward the door. "Where are you going?" he asked. "Away from both of you." I didn't take much. Just a small bag. Some clothes. My keys. Before leaving, I looked at him one last time. "You didn't just break my heart," I said. "You destroyed my family." Then I walked out. That night I drove for hours. No destination. No plan. Just distance. It's been almost a year since that night. Daniel and I never spoke again. Emily tried to contact me many times. Calls, messages, emails. I never answered. Sometimes people ask if I regret cutting her out of my life. After all, she's still my sister. But every time I remember that message on Daniel's phone, those 3 words, I realize something. Trust is fragile. And once it's broken, some relationships can never be the same again.